All right, so middleware. This is not something that is specific to Express. Middleware is a general term. You can use middleware on the front end, you can use middleware on the back end, but what middleware refers to is something that fires on the in-between. It's, you think about the routes we have, for example, the movie routes we have here. When this file is hit, when a request is made to the server, does all of the code run? Let's say I make a GET request to /movies. Is all of this going to be read and run? Starting from my server file, what code would be run if I made a request to /movies? Just a basic GET request. Line 1, line 2, line 5, line 10. Then it would jump over here. It would read these lines because they're just hard-coded here. But then it would only read this first line, run the route, and it's over. If it's a post request, the same process, but then when it gets to this line, it skips this and runs to this one and only runs this portion. So essentially, if you read the Express docs, actually, let me pull that up here so we can read it from their direct interpretation. Of course, I can't find it now. There's a part of the Express docs where it says middleware or Express is nothing, an Express server is nothing more than a collection of middleware functions. So everything we're pretty much writing in our server is middleware because not everything has to fire, only the things that are required for that request. And so there's many different types and ways to make middleware, but there's also a specific method in Express you can use to make, to customize middleware, use your own. So far, we have written two types of middleware. We've written routes which fire on specific requests, and we've written ones without a route that fire on every request. What is the one piece of middleware we've written so far that fires on every single request? App.use, and it gives us the request body. What's that line we put in here? Express.json. So this app.use is the method provided by Express for using middleware. This is explicitly for that. You can use pre-built middleware, you can build your own. Now this is using one that's pre-built, and we're saying fired on every request because we've left off the optional first argument. The optional first argument of the .use method is a path. If I added a path to this middleware, it will now only fire when the request comes to movies. So you have the ability to fire all the time or fire on specific times, but app.use is the method we use to do that. All right, so app.use is the first one. Well, let's set up our own middleware to learn its parts. So we were able to say app.get, app.post. We're going to keep saying app.use now for middleware. And just like a get or post or delete, it will also optionally receive the request and response objects. So right now, how often would this fire? Would this fire on every request? No requests? Every request, because we didn't say what path to fire it on. So we can pass functions into it to do something, or it will give us a function with the request and response object if we need to do something. And so let's just do this. We will console.log middleware, let's spell it, middleware was hit. And let's run this. Incrementally so. And we're going to keep this console open so we can see it when it happens. /movies. It doesn't matter what we're sending the request to. There is no mount path. We'll make just a normal get request. And this is to 7,000. Send. Middleware was hit. All right, let me try a post request. Will we get the same console log? What do we think? A get request triggered it. Okay. Yes. How about a delete or a put? Yes, because we did not say .get, .post. We did not specify what method should trigger this. if this code is run, this will be triggered. Now, if I said app.use, when you get a request to farm animals, then console log this, or run this middleware. So now it doesn't matter what the type of request I make. If it is to / farm animals, we will still get that console log. Okay, so that's setting up middleware, whether you need it to fire all the time or on a specific type of request. We're going to be dealing with it on every single request for this lesson. Now, what have we noticed is happening though? Let me send another GET request to the server. What is happening in Postman here? Why is it still loading? What ends a server process? Res.send. Res.send is our return statement for our server. So this would actually end the process and stop this eternal loading. But sometimes middleware isn't the last thing that needs to run. Maybe this is just a little bit of code that checks for something in their request body before then letting it move forward onto the post request they're submitting. So how do we tell this function to end, but don't end the server process? Move to the next piece of middleware, which may be the route that actually goes and talks to the database. Well, for that, we get one more argument. And every route, everything we use gets this argument. We just haven't used it yet. And it is called next. So if you want to move on to the next thing in your server, but you don't want to end the server process, you won't say res.send, you'll call the function next. So if I type next in here, and then here I'll make an app.get, that is to / stuff, and I'll res.send stuff. So I'm going to send a request to / stuff. Will we see this console log? Yes, there is no path here. So this is going to fire because it is above where this is written. JavaScript reads top to bottom. So I'll make a request to / stuff. Hit send. I got my stuff back and my middleware was hit. So it hit my middleware, console log, said next, and next literally means pop out of this method and move to the next line of code, wherever that may be. And it will keep reading down the file until it finds another handler that it matches and run the process. Now maybe .get was not the end of the process. Maybe this does something, but then we had another thing down here. We're making stuff up now. This is contrived. But just to show you that routes can do this the same. So I don't want to send stuff here. I want to send stuff here. Do I have access to next in this method? Yeah, I just have to add it to the parentheses. First stuff was hit. And then lastly, well, then we'll call next. And then we'll send it. So we should see console log, next will be called. This will get triggered because the endpoint matches. Console log, next was called. This will get triggered because the method and endpoint matches, and then it will send. We'll go and get. Middleware is hit, first stuff was hit, and we got our stuff back. So a contrived example, but just showing that this word is available, and starting next week, we will have to use this word in every route because it's how we handle errors. We haven't done any error handling yet in our servers, but it is arguably one of the most important parts of your server is how you handle your errors. And we need the next keyword to help us with that. Now, what is the method of in Express that I can use to use middleware? That I can use to use middleware. Use, yes. App.use uses middleware. These are also middleware because it gets access to next in case we need to move on to the next thing. And that's why Express says everything is technically middleware. If you need to use custom middleware or stuff that we have, you can use. So it doesn't get triggered on a specific method, but all methods. And there's more we can do with this. Let's say this is a post request. Get rid of this. App.post to stuff. And we just want to send back the rec.body. So we're going to send an object in a post request, and we're going to get it back, but we would like some stuff added to it on the in-between. So my app.use receives the request and response objects just like any route does. And objects are mutable, and they're passed by value, or passed by reference, sorry. So if I change something on the request object in this route, since the server process hasn't ended when it calls next, this request object and this request object are the exact same thing. Anything I do here affects the one here. So I'm going to send an object just with a title of, oh man, hi. Yeah, I'm hungry, I think. I'm very hungry. So we're going to send this, and we'd like to get it back that it has a description, and it has different properties added to it. So the way we can do that, this will receive the rec.body because this middleware is parsing it. So we can say rec.body.description equals howdy, and rec.body.image URL equals some image URL. And then we're saying next. Well, when it gets this trigger, this request object again is the same, so the rec.body is the same. It's going to have these properties added to it, and we're going to send it back. Are you following what's happening here? I see nods somewhere diagonal. I don't know what that means. Yeah, it's different. We've been used to so far writing one route and ending the server process in that route. That's not always the case. Sometimes we need things to happen first before we hit the route that ends up ending the server process. But when I make a request, until that server process ends, we're dealing with the exact same request and response object in every piece of code that's triggered. So let's just send this and see it happen. I'm going to send a title of hi. I get back this, but it has my description and image URL added to it. All right, because rec.body is what I sent. I'm adding properties to it equal to certain values. I'm calling next so that this then gets triggered, and then I'm just sending that object back to the user. That is the basis of middleware. What if I only wanted this to run when the when the request was to / stuff? What would I have to add to it? Yeah, I have to add, and the official term for this, or the posh term, is a mount path. Oh, wrong stuff. There we go. That's the stuff. Post. Still works. But if it's not to stuff, what am I going to get back? What will this request to? A post to /. I heard the right answer. Absolutely nothing. Ever. Because is there any post request set up here to /? No, let's change this one then. Now what will we get back? If I send this object, what am I going to get back? The exact same one. This is not going to get triggered. It is a middleware, but we've told it only get triggered on this request endpoint. So I'm sending an object with hi in it. I'm getting back an object with hi in it. If I get rid of this, now I'm saying fire every single request, regardless if it's a get, post, put, or delete. So you don't need to start using this next word yet. This will really come into play once we get databases going and we have real errors to handle. But just be aware that we will start using this in every route. So if you want to start including this parameter, even though you're not using it, It's a good thing to get used to because we will have to use it on every route. And that is Express middleware in a nutshell. The write-up is really nice, again, for this, showing you, this is going to be called on every request, and then next. This also gets called on every request because no mount path and just a forward slash is every single request. Everything starts with that. Now, hot cross buns, the request would have to go to this to get that hit. And then I think this server would probably set pending forever because there's still no res.send anywhere. Let's look at one middleware we're going to want to use going forward to help us with debugging. So far, we're at the mercy of our server's errors, which are nice. They give you a line number, but as your requests get more complex, we need some helpful console logs. So going forward now, we're going to have two NPM packages to install, Express and Morgan. It's a very small package, as you can see how quickly that installed. But it is also a middleware we want to fire on every request. So right up here, along with app.use express.json, we're going to first require Morgan. And then we're going to tell our server to .use Morgan in its development environment. So this is a console logger. They're just known as loggers. And what it does, every single request that comes in, this will get triggered, and it will give us a really cool console log down here of what request just came in, what endpoint was requested, and what did the requested endpoint look like, which is becomes extremely helpful. So let's see now, because usually we just see this, right? We don't see anything unless we manually console log. Let's now send a post request to /. And there we go. Here is Morgan. You just made a post request to /200. The status is good. Everything went well. It took this long. If we change the endpoint to stuff, we make a request to stuff and send. Now it says you just made a post to /stuff. So we know which endpoint got triggered. That's super helpful. That this will happen every time our front end makes a request. What's even nicer is if I have a parameter of some sort, so /:ID, and I make a request to stuff number, whatever stuff item that is, and I send that, the endpoint will show what the user passed in. That is being represented in this parameter. So Morgan is good. And it's minimal line of code, right? Install, require, and use. And that's all we need to get these logs. You will have a short exercise on middleware later today. But your goal is to intercept, write an express server to handle a GET request that returns an object of any kind as a response. Write a middleware function in a separate JavaScript file that accepts the rec, res, and next parameters. I don't need you to put it in another file. If you do it all in your server.js file like we just did, that's going to get you the point. You can try to modularize it. It works the same way, but basically it needs to add a property to the request object. So you'd say like rec.the color blue equals blue, so that in the next route that sees it, that request object, you can see that it's staying the same. And then it calls next, so it continues on. Just playing with this syntax. Right before lunch here, I'm going to stop this real quick.